I think we should get started. I think we're all good.
Perfect. Okay. So greetings from New York. I'm Francesca Grum. I'm Assistant Director at the United Nations Statistics Division, where I oversee the demographic and social statistics programs. And I'd like to welcome you all to this webinar on dynamic population mapping, organized by the task team on mobile phone data of the UN Committee of Experts on Big Data and Data Science for Official Statistics, in collaboration with the UN Regional Hub on Big Data and Data Science for Africa. This is the third meeting of a series of webinars on the use of mobile phone data, or MPD, for official statistics. The first event took place in November 23 and highlighted the potential of MPD to fill data gaps and contribute to the achievement of SDGs. It also presented several interesting use cases. That was followed by a second webinar in February 24, just a month ago, that discussed opportunities and challenges in using MPD for official statistics. And finally, today, at this third webinar, we will dive into the use of mobile phone data for dynamic population mapping. This topic and meeting are very timely, given the growing interest and need for countries to rely on a variety of data sources to build and maintain a population data system, including censuses, household surveys, and increasingly administrative data and geospatial information, in order to address challenges such as rising costs, declining response rates, and new requests for much more frequent, timely, and disaggregated data. In this context, we expect further transformation, with countries embracing digital-first, multi-mode methods, and indeed the use of a variety of sources for population data. Therefore, I'm very happy that this webinar will take stock of existing experience in using mobile phone data as an additional and complementary data source for population statistics. This will also be an opportunity to reflect with our panelists and all together on the role that mobile phone data can play in population data systems now and in the future, as well as on how this data could be integrated with other data, more traditional ones on people and their characteristics. I'm sure that many of you with us today are aware of the huge potential of mobile phone data for official statistics, as they are generated continuously and automatically as a byproduct of mobile phone network operations. And they offer almost real-time granular information on the location of the population and its movements, and therefore could be critical to fill important data gaps, particularly on measuring population mobility and migration. They could, for instance, be used to answer policy and research questions on daily commuting patterns, seasonal migration, but also sudden population movements due to emergencies or crises, thus offering a dynamic view of population flows for more timely and targeted interventions. Of course, using MPD as a source of official statistics, and in particular as a source of population data for our discussion today, that also come with challenges, including getting access to privately held sources, ensuring data accuracy, as well as consistency with statistical concepts and definitions used in more traditional data sources for measuring and monitoring population concerns. Strong collaboration between a very broad group of stakeholders, including statisticians, demographers, data scientists, mobile network operators and regulators, policymakers, and others, is also crucial. as well as the establishment of robust data governance frameworks in line with international standards for data use and sharing, to ensure the ethical use of MPD to protect privacy and to assure the quality and sustainability of the statistics produced. So I really look forward to our discussion with our distinguished panelists over the next couple of hours on experiences and lessons learned on using mobile phone data for dynamic population mapping, as well as on the related UN guide developed by the UN Committee of Experts on Big Data that will also be introduced during this event. So without further ado, let me introduce our speakers. We have with us today Louise De La Rua, who is a GIS and census expert at UNFPA. We have, I'm not sure if we have actually, David Bisa, who is a data scientist at the Ghana Statistical Services. We have Thomas Smallwood, who is a data scientist at Flowminder. Yes, we have Lamine Diba, who is the principal statistician at the Gambian Bureau of Statistics. We have Zachary Strain Fahid, who is a data analyst at Flowminder. And we have Sim Isco, who is the international project development lead at Posithium. So a truly amazing group of experts bringing different voices and expertise from national and international levels, as well as from the government, academia, and the private sectors. So let's hear from them. I think, Louise, you are the first to go. You have 10 minutes. And before giving you the floor, maybe just a quick reminder for our audience to feel free to use the chat box to ask questions, comments, reflections, share your experience as our speakers make their interventions. Thank you very much, Louise.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. Just a question, can you see my presentation now? No? Okay.
I can't.
Trying to. It should be sharing now.
I don't see
No,
it.
Let me try with. And now? No, it doesn't work. Okay, Jonah, you have my presentation that I shared with you. Can you put it on the screen, please? Sorry for this inconvenience.
Oh, no problem.
Can be. And with, if I try with, okay, now it's working on this way. Let me see if I can turn it into a slideshow. Okay.
Now we can see it.
Is it okay now?
Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay now, right. But I've lost my notes. Well, anyway, I think I can do it without them. Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. I wanted to, with this presentation, I wanted to share with you a rationale around the use of mobile phone data from the UNFPA perspective. More focus on the region I have been working in for the last 2 years, LACRO region, Latin American and Caribbean region, where you will see that the use of mobile phone data is still well, it has a potential, but it needs to grow more. Okay. Quick introduction about UNFPA mandate. Well, UNFPA have the role of the mandate to strengthen population data systems with two main points to focus on, which are leave no one behind, and also to assess and identify demographic dynamics and changes. Okay, to do so, well, we provide technical support. We provide a broad support on different data collection activities such as population and housing censuses, CRBS data, and household surveys such as mix, heights, and generations and gender. Okay. So within that mandate, we have different domains where UNFPA focus on its support to countries and stakeholders. We focus on the use of GIS data, okay, to make possible to display and to share SDGs indicators at a subnational level, which we think it's important to identify which regions within the country are progressing or are collecting this kind of information. We have been also producing population grids with the collaboration of WorldPop, and also we are working on population models or spatial population models. Not just to have them as a population product, also to showcase potential uses of these population grids, such as health facilities, accessibility models, infrastructure planning, disaster management, etc. Then one of the main one of our flagships, let's call them like that, are the common operational data sets focused on population, and also the geospatial.
Jonas, sorry, Jonas, can you move the slides? I believe, I mean, at least I only see the cover.
It's still. Oh,
thank you.
Okay, sorry. It's Jonah who's showing the slide.
Yeah.
Okay, I was a bit confused. I thought it was my screen. Sorry.
No worries.
So you can go to the next one, please. Jonah.
Okay, this one.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Okay.
And also we provide support on disseminate population data with a linkage with the geospatial field. Okay, we want to relate or to establish that relationship between the stats data and spatial data to find patterns, to identify regions where different indicators are showing us the information. Please, next. Okay, so about the common operational data sets on population statistics, these data sets are the reference data sets, okay, when supporting operations and decision-making in humanitarian responses, disaster management, population movement or displacements, okay. Then this has to be the standard best available data sets. So we ensure consistency, we ensure standardization, and we ensure that we have the latest available data sets produced either by country or by other stakeholders. And these are required by other stakeholders and agencies when an emergency happens in a country, so we need them to plan and to establish policies in these cases. Please, next. Okay, so for this flagship, the Common Operational Datasets, UNFPA has 4 main roles, which is to facilitate the access, okay, to the best available population, and we usually disseminate this kind of data through platforms such as Humanitarian Data Exchange, so that that information is up to date, standardized, and ready to be utilized by anyone who's interested in. Support the routine production and updating and standardization and validation of all these data sets. Support countries to produce their CODs, and as well as provide guidance, technical guidance on the use of these data sets, which are we teach, or we provide guidance on what are the limitations of these CODs, how can and what is the best way we can use them. Okay, next, please. And to produce these CODs, we are mostly based on censuses, data collections, okay? But these censuses are becoming harder and harder to carry out. And actually, they are being placed under scrutiny, okay? Because, well, as you may all know, and most of us have experienced, we are having issues to justify the high cost of a census, not only economically, in logistics. In some cases, we stop the country for 1 or 2 or 3 days just to try to increase as much as we can the census coverage. Then after the census, in most of the cases, we are taking too long to process and publish data. So when the data is published, it is already 2 or 3 years old. We are, at least in the region I'm based in what we are experiencing with the 2020 census round, issues with the coverage of the census, with the and also with the relevance of the data we are collecting, as well as various accuracy issues. And the last one, among all these factors that well, are putting in trouble or are making us to rethink how we are collecting population data in the future, we have challenges in capturing population, especially vulnerable groups, nomadic populations, and another. Yeah. So we are having challenges on capturing the whole population. Please, next. So okay, so as an example, here is the data collection, or the census data collection in Costa Rica, one of the countries we have been supporting to improve their census dataset through the setting up of a Bayesian statistical model to complement, okay, that census. So what we are doing, what we found, is that we had a coverage of the 45% of the households in the country, and that the main problem in this case is that these coverage issues, they were not focused in some regions. It was spread all around the country. Okay, so in every census district, we were having households that have been covered and census that haven't. Okay, so this is just a critical example of what we are facing. Okay, when we are after expending or after preparing for 5 years the census activity, we came back with this kind of results. Okay, next, please. So in order to improve, complement, replace the way we are carrying out data collection activities. These are a little bit the trends that we are having in mind for the next 15 years. All countries are actually requesting new approaches in order to complement their censuses or to modify the way we approach this data collection. So we are looking towards transitioning to census or register-based censuses, either by reducing the size of the questionnaires or reducing the sample. So this is one of the initiatives that countries are thinking about. Second one, CAPI combined with other methodologies such as online self-enumeration, phone interviews, etc. Then things that, for example, we are currently carrying out is diversifying the data sources, such as geospatial data to model the spatial population, or also to model other indicators or other data sources, use of big data, use of mobile phone, social media, or web scrape data, as well as I mentioned before, population data modeling in order to improve, complete those census where we have found issues with coverage, issues with even if we have covered all the households, in many cases we are finding population undercounts because not all the members of the household have been properly interviewed, etc. Please, next. So with this current scenario, after having evaluating the 2020 census round, this is the way UNFPA is looking now at mobile phone data. Okay. What are the potential uses we could be using mobile phone data for? So, for example, we have for disaster preparedness and planning response, census data is not able to, or population models based on census data are not able to, I would say even using geospatial data, are not able to identify population movements due to security reasons. For example, something we are facing now in Haiti, okay? Or in a sudden disaster, we would have the same. We would be sharing our common operational data sets, telling other stakeholders where the population was at the census time, but not at the current time. So they become a little bit useless or not best option. So the same, we are not, some of the problems we are facing now with census is how to better find the people in dwellings to run the interviews. Okay, so mobile phone data can be super useful to let us know where the people is, okay, during the nighttime, or maybe optimize what are the best time to run the enumeration or to send the enumerators to the field. Also, as I mentioned before, capture mobile and displaced population, nomadic population, and also to support intercessor population estimates. Please, next. Okay, few experience where UNFPA has been involved on the use of mobile phone data. In Ukraine, when producing the COD, they used population data to adjust baseline population and to model or improve the population disaggregation by age and sex, and those movements within country and outside the country. With Democratic Republic of Congo, which is going to be presented by the next panelist, UNFPA collaborate at the very beginning when UNFPA was still member of GRID 3, And in Maldives in 2018, there was a pilot study to develop methodology to estimate population using big data. Maldives is a very specific case, as it's around 1,000 little islands, all scattered across the sea. So it is very complicated to assess where the population lives. And actually, we have these typical situations where when population is informed that the census is going to take place, they come back to the islands where they have their families to be interviewed on their home islands, whereas most of the population are likely to live in the main islands in the big cities where they work or they live permanently. Okay, so we have a big discrepancy between the population assessed or the population, the photo of the population on the census night and the rest of the 10 years. Okay, so these movements of the population are very typical also in countries like in Bolivia, where they are facing the same issues. Okay, where population goes back to the home places to be interviewed. Okay, and next, please. Okay, the way forward. So the idea, given that the issues we're facing with the current census round, and after evaluating all the issues we are finding in the census that are being currently processed and published, definitely we need to integrate mobile phone data in the following assessment products, especially in cases where where census either has a partial failure or a total failure or even didn't happen. Okay, so this is a great population data resource to produce population estimates, model population at subnational level. Also, mobile phone population data can be an additional resource to be taken into account in future demographic analysis, healthcare planning, school planning, infrastructure planning, and disaster response actions. And I think this was the last. Yes. So thank you very much. Please, any question you may have, I will be more than happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luisa. If you don't mind, I would rather go through the 6 presentations, and then we can get enough time to go through questions and answers. I'm actually happy I already took note of the first question that we'll ask you and others to answer in a little bit. Just a few takeaway from this initial presentation that was very useful. You set the stage for our next couple of hours. I like that you highlight the power of mobile phone data, both in the settings to produce data in humanitarian settings, and I think there are several experiences there, but you also put the emphasis on the power of MPD in as a complementing additional source to adjust census data, right? And we know that many countries in this round, in the 2020 census round, are really noticing and suffering from under coverage. So MPD has a huge potential to be used to correct for under coverage, as well as you mentioned to estimate population mobility patterns. So all of this is well taken into account, and it's again important to discuss MPD in the context of humanitarian settings, but also in the more development settings. And talking about census is absolutely a must as the key pillar of any population data system. So having said that, let's move to our next presenter. Again, happy to introduce our colleague from the Ghana Statistical Service, Mr. David Bisa. David, if you are with us, you have the floor. Yes, you are. Nice to see you. You are muted, or at least I cannot hear you. I don't hear you. I don't know if our colleagues from ECA can help. I see you, but I don't hear you. Yeah, no.
Jessica, sorry. David, can you check your mic? Because from our side, it's enabled. And you are one of the presenter. Thank you.
Okay, so I know that Thomas, oh, I heard something. Is it you, David?
Hello, can you hear me now? Yes.
Yes, yes, now we can. Thank you.
Okay, okay, great. So let me share my screen. Please, can you see my screen?
Not yet. We see the wrong screen. We see Teams. Yes. No.
Can you see my screen now? Okay. Great.
Yes. You just need to put it in yes, presentation mode. Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry about the hitches. So my name is David Max Obesan. I am a CDL data analyst with Ghana Statistical Service, and I'll be sharing Ghana's experience in leveraging mobile phone data for dynamic population mapping. So my presentation is in 2 segments. I will first walk you through Ghana's journey so far using CDR, and then also share some excerpts from the CDR output we have generated, standard mobility report. So back in 2018, 2019, Ghana was privileged to have been partnered with Vodafone Ghana, which is now Telecel, under the Data for Good Partnership project, which we were privileged to have technical support from Flowminder, and then also drawing financial support from Vodafone Foundation and Hewlett Foundation. The objective of the project was to build capacity with GSS to be able to incorporate CDR data analysis into the production of official statistics. And so to build capacity, first what we did was to train 8 GSS staff in CDR analysis. By that, we began with Python training and then data analysis in general, and then moved to the standard mobility report that was developed for us to be able to come out with reports, mobility reports. So, And then we, with FlowMinder, had to automate, an algorithm sitting in the Vodafone server, Telecel now, which is the FlowKit, which enables us to be able to access the CDR aggregates, as it were. This algorithm anonymizes and aggregates the mobile phone data before we can generate output from it. This is all done just to be sure that we are not breaching the data privacy issues that we have, and then preserving the privacy of subscribers. Then if we generate reports, the reports, we had actually instituted a steering committee that ensures that we are adhering to the agreement that we had signed with Vodafone. And so reports would have first to be shared with Vodafone Ghana, which is now Telecel, and before the steering. Hello?
David, we lost you. Yes, please. David?
Can I be heard?
Now, yes.
Okay, sorry. So let me move on then. Yeah, so so what we did was also to make sure that we are in line with what we're doing. We signed a data sharing agreement, which was to end in 2022, and it was renewed later on. This gave us the privilege to access some specific variables and indicators from the CDR. Knowing very well that others may be interested in the CDR data, we also set in place, part of the responsibility of the steering committee was to approve third parties who will be interested in working with the CDR data. And so there were 3 steps that they had to go through. One has to pick a form from the website and then declare the intent for which they are requesting for the data. That goes to the steering committee to validate the request, and then if it meets the criteria, then the request is granted. So after COVID, realizing the potential in the use of CDR, we started exploring more use cases by engaging with our stakeholders, primary stakeholders being Ghana Health Service and then NADMO, just to get some use cases to be able to. I think Tom will be sharing with us some of the use cases that we've had with NADMO and then Ghana Health Service. And then we also realized there was recognizing the need to showcase the novelty. We have taken advantage of data fairs and other platforms to share insights from the CDR. And so we've had the opportunity to participate in a data fair for parliamentarians and also at conferences outside Ghana. In terms of usability, there were about 4 big institutions that had expressed interest to use the CDR data, which the steering committee had to approve. So the second segment, we will look at just excerpts from one of the outputs from the CDR data. So recognizing the need and the importance of dynamic population estimates and automation to generate standard reports on mobility in Ghana has been developed. The rationale is to provide support to routine social and humanitarian response programs. And this report we had actually intended to release every year. The content to share with you, just a snapshot of what we have. We'll look at just the resident population at the various levels. We have the relocation, which helps in the adjustment of the population in area to get the resident population. And then the focus for this report, even though we have 16 regions, we selected 4 major regions because of their population and then also being the hub for economic activities. And so just to share just some highlights from the report with us. The intention is not to go into the findings, but just to share some of the charts we have. So the resident is actually calculated by adjusting the population in an area with the net inflows from other regions or districts into a particular area. And so so you look at the period within which we had for this report, we had 6, this is 1 year period. And so you are looking at within the year, you are calculating the resident population for each month. And then you are looking at the changes you are recording over the years, over the months. And so the purple color here is indicating the areas, is indicating where we have population increases. And then the blue color is where we have decline in population, where people had actually, the net flow was actually negative. Inflow was actually negative. And so there are other areas indicated with fluctuations, and we have gray areas for where we do not have enough data to show. And so this is gives us an idea of what the population in an area, the dynamic population in an area is. And we can glean, from the map that the increase in population may require further investigation to inform the provision of social interventions or amenities. Or the other places where we have a decline, we can also further investigate to why people were moving from those areas. So this provides us a rich information as to what is happening by way of mobility. And then the second aspect looks at relocation, flows within Ghana. So by relocation, we are looking at the population changing their home location for a longer period. And then we use for all the relocations within the area, we are looking at the median value for all the relocations as the average representing the relocation value for the period. And then we calculated also the relocation size, being the relative, relocation. You compare the relocation with all the other, for a particular area, with all the other relocations within the country to see the relocation size, measuring how intense the flow is from one location to the other location. So here, this is giving us an indication of what the situation is looking at Ghana. And then you could see from the map that it looks relocation. In actual fact, this depicts only 30 top relocation flows. And you could see from the map that the more intense flows happen, middle to down south belt of the country, with 3 major, regions being dominating with an intense flow, so showing the social, social connection, stronger social connection between them. And then the report also looked at, as I indicated, 4 major, of which the Greater Accra, of course, which is the capital city, was also at focus. And so here, the purple color is indicating where the flow is originating from, and then the destination being the green color. So this is how Greater Accra, the capital city, is interacting with the other cities, regions in Ghana. And then we look at Kumasi, which is also the capital city in Ashanti region, being one of the greatest, looking at in terms of population and also a hub for economic activities. And so we needed to look at how this region was interacting with the other regions to understand what the implications would be in terms of policy. And so you could see that majority of the movement were to the neighboring districts around the Kumasi. But then we see its connection with Tema being a harbor, one of the harbors in Ghana. You see Ashanti region, an intense connection between, the two. And it could be attributed to the harbor that it's located in Tema, Greater Accra. Western region was also looked at because it also has a harbor. So Sikandi Takoradi being the metro in the Western region, we needed to see how the relocation flow is with the other. And again, we noticed that majority of the flows were to the neighboring regions and districts, but also an interaction with districts in Greater Accra. And then also it was needful to look at what the situation is in the northern part. And so we looked at Tamale being the northern region, and you could see the relocation flows, cascades, but also in the neighboring regions and districts. Majority of the flows were just in the neighboring districts, but we could see some connection with Greater Accra and also Ashanti, Kumasi. So by conclusion, I want to indicate that mobility trends reveal strengths and weaknesses in social connections among regions, suggesting areas governments need to provide social amenities and also encourage economic development. Just to share with my other colleagues in NSOs some recommendations. I wish to indicate that technical infrastructure and capacity are paramount to the sustainability of the partnership if they intend to go into this, because you have to be able to benefit fully from the use of CDR. You need to build capacity to be able to ensure that the program still continues. And then data privacy issues and other legal requirements must also be satisfied and adhered to. Stakeholder engagement is critical for leveraging CDR to improve official statistics. And it is also important to indicate that in using CDRs, especially in the low and middle income countries, the cell towers are limited in the rural settlements. And so the tendency to, aggravate the level of biasness in the CDR, it's there. And so that we should be looking at other alternatives to minimize the biases, which usually is service. CDR data analysis it's also important to acknowledge the biases and limitations associated with estimates and offer a more transparent methodology and application to users. And it's also important to as you partner with the private sector, explore the mutual benefit from the project. And so this will bring me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. That was excellent. And I'm so happy that you leave us with this last slide on recommendations for national statisticians in the room with us. I think it's critical that they take note of all the steps that they should follow if they are interested, and hopefully they are interested in discovering more how they can engage with regulators and operators in their country, and they can start mining and exploiting MPD for population data. Something that I don't think you picked up at the end, but you explained very well during your presentation, is the importance of also being able to articulate well why you need the data. What are the policy or research questions that you would like to answer using MPD? So maybe that's something that we could also add to the list. And I also would like to bring the attention of our participants, that, by the way, you are 140, I think, if the number is correct up there, to take a look to the chat, because some of your questions have already been answered. I see, for example, Esperanza from ITU, who is leading the task team on the use of mobile phone data for official statistics under the UN CEBD, this committee of experts on big data and data science. She is providing additional information on the issue of getting access and working with regulators and operators at the country level, mobile operators. Okay. So let's move to our next presenter. I believe it's you, Thomas. You have the floor.
Hi, thank you very much. I'll just share my screen and hopefully I have slightly more luck. Has that worked?
Perfect.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the invitation to talk again today. I'm going to be building on some of the topics that David's already discussed, but moving on to think more about the applications of dynamic population mapping using CGR data, particularly focusing on public health and disaster management. For those who joined the previous webinars, I think that we're probably already slightly familiar at Flowminder, but I'll just quickly jump to the fact that we're a non-profit organization which has worked in a number of countries to mobilize CGR data and mobile phone data. And our overall aim is to enable decision makers to access the data they need to transform the lives of vulnerable people at scale. So with that, I'm going to jump to our first set of applications, some examples of work that we've done at Flowminder, first on public health. So to give a bit of background about the underpinning of the ideas that that influence public health, we have an example here of 2 districts, and in this case we have a condition where in month 1 we have 4 cases of a condition in District A and 8 cases in District B, and each has a population of 20 people, meaning that District A has a prevalence of the condition of 0.2 and District B has a prevalence of 0.4. If we go then to month 2, we can see that in District A, the number of cases has gone down. It's now 3 cases, and it stayed the same in District B. Now, if we didn't understand population mobility, we might therefore assume that prevalence has gone down in District A and prevalence has stayed the same in District B. However, when we take into account the mobility of the population and we concede that District A now has a population of 15 and District B has a population of 25 because more people have moved from District A into District B than from B into A, we can actually see that in District A, the prevalence of the condition has stayed the same at 0.2, whereas in District B, the prevalence has in fact gone down. And the value that mobility data provides is that we can get more frequent estimates of population based on detecting the temporary or permanent relocation of populations. And mobile phone data is a very strong source of data from which to calculate mobility. And in this case, These dynamic population estimates are acting as a dynamic denominator for calculating health metrics which have a per capita basis. So there's a quick reminder for those like me who their school days of maths talk about numerators and denominators a little bit further behind them. In this case, in this example, cases act as a numerator and the population acts as a denominator. So when we talk about a dynamic denominator, we're talking about the dynamic population estimates. So this has a number of different applications. The example that I've already shown is perhaps more related to infectious or non-infectious disease, but it also has applications to vaccination campaign planning and evaluation, and can also have a role in understanding the needs for public health infrastructure and resources. So, for example, planning where new infrastructure might be located based on change in population, and improving the distribution of resources. So where has demand increased or decreased, and does demand fluctuate over time, perhaps due to seasonal movements of labour or nomadic populations? So one of the places where we've been working on public health applications is Ghana, in partnership with GSS and Telecel, previously Vodafone Ghana. And in June 2023, GSS and Flowminder held a 2-day workshop on the use of mobility data with Ghana Health Service, the Ministry of Health, and the University of Ghana. And we worked with groups to identify some key priority health metrics that they would be interested in applying these dynamic population estimates to calculating. And in those groups, we identified 4 metrics that we're going to take a look at, which were tuberculosis incidence, outpatient department attendance, antenatal care coverage, and hypertension incidence. And what we know going into this is that the work that we've done in Ghana previously is, and as we've seen from David already, the population is changing in districts across the country. We have some districts where the population is increasing and others where the population is decreasing, and a smaller number where the population fluctuates, so it goes up and down over time as people move in and out on a seasonal basis. So taking a look at some of the results that we found when we looked at this and zooming in on specific districts, here we have an example of calculating tuberculosis incidence in Cape Coast North in the central region. And in the top half of the figure, we have the, sorry, this is hypertension actually, rather than tuberculosis. That's my mistake. We can see that hypertension cases go up and down over time in this area. There's a particular peak towards the end of 2021 and into the start of 2022. In the second part of this figure, we can see that the population in this area changes quite substantially over time. We see large fluctuations with the population decreasing and increasing when we use CGR data to calculate these more dynamic population estimates compared to using simply a UN population projection, which predicts only a small increase over time. And actually in this district, this is likely associated with movements of students in and out of a university campus in this district. Now, when we take mobility into account and we compare the calculation of hypertension incidence in this district between 2021 and 2022, using first the CGR-derived dynamic population estimates in blue compared to the incidence calculated using the UN population projections, we can see that particularly during that peak in 2021 into the start of early 2022, there's a large difference in that calculation, which may be important when considering public health responses. Looking at a second example, here we're looking at outpatient department visits in Obuasi East in Ashanti region. And what we can see looking in the top panel is that there's this overall increase in the number of outpatient department visits over 2021 and 2022. In the second frame, we can see that there's also an increase in the dynamic population estimates derived from CGR data over that same period. So when we combine those two things together and we calculate the outpatient department attendance metric, we can see that the increase in outpatient attendance is actually much smaller when we account for the increase in the population when compared to if we use the UN population projections. And this, of course, could have substantial impacts on how we approach public health questions around resourcing of outpatient departments in different areas. We can see that there's an increase in the need in the population as the number of visits has increased, but we will also make inferences that this might be linked to the increase in population to help us understand the drivers of this increase in outpatient department visits, and therefore how public health decision makers might make changes to resourcing in order to meet those needs. The second public health example I want to talk about is our Mapping for Health project in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So children with 0 doses, insufficient doses, or ineffective doses for various vaccines are most often located in the most rural or isolated areas, or areas where there are significant mobile populations. One of the potential causes of this is, for example, deficiencies in the cold chain storage of vaccines. So a promising strategy for reaching 0-dose and under-vaccinated children is to first identify areas with high mobility, which we can do with mobile phone data and field survey data. And second, to establish advanced and mobile vaccination sites in areas for far from fixed vaccination centres. For this talk, I'm going to mostly be focusing on that first part, which is identifying areas with high mobility. So as with Ghana, we can see from the work that we've already done in Democratic Republic of the Congo that health zones across the country variously may increase or decrease in population over time. And we also see that there are a number of health zones where the population fluctuates over time, goes up and down as people move in and out. And this has a number of applications to vaccination planning related to that first objective. So in DRC at the moment, we're working with the public health sector in the country to use mobility indicators for 4 different purposes. First, to contribute to the effective targeting of communities on the move, so identify areas where there's highly mobile populations who may be missed by previous vaccination campaigns, to support the coordination between different health zones at a regional level to optimize the quantities of vaccination available, so helping health zones understand where people are moving in and out to, so that they're able to coordinate between health zones to ensure that coverage is achieved. Explain discrepancies between quantities of vaccines distributed and the number of vaccines which have been planned to distribute. So if an area either vaccinates more or fewer people than were expected based on the planning, is that because of changes in the population in that area? And finally, supporting future planning of vaccination objectives in each health zone, so helping them predict whether or not the population may increase or decrease at the time of future vaccination campaigns, and therefore plan to ensure that the appropriate number of vaccines are available for distribution in that health zone. So moving on very quickly to a brief example of some dynamic risk mapping for humanitarian response as well. When we think about calculating hazard risk, there's a number of different factors that we want to consider. The first is most obviously the probability of an area being impacted by a given hazard, such as flooding. The second is the number of people in an area who might be exposed to a hazard. A third factor is the vulnerability of the area, which includes dimensions such as socioeconomic vulnerability in the presence of vulnerable groups. And finally, this is all weighed against the capacity for authorities and institutions in the area to respond to a given hazard. However, what we know is that mobility means that the number of people in an area can go up or down over time, meaning that the exposure component of this may be reduced or it may be increased, which will affect the response and the risk overall that a hazard poses. Again, in Ghana, we've worked with GSS and the National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO, to identify the types of hazards that are of concern to NADMO, particularly flooding, fires, drought, and storm surges were some of the ones that they highlighted when we've held workshops with them. And we're now engaging with them on using CGR-derived dynamic population estimates for hazard risk analysis to support the development of suitable response plans in high-risk areas and to optimize the placement of resources to facilitate emergency responses. The way in which we've done this is we've started with anonymized CGR aggregates from which we've calculated the percentage change in subscriber presence at different times of day and at different days of the week. So along the top here, we can see that we've got 9 a.m., 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. And then we've got weekdays, Saturdays and Sundays. By combining this with static population data, we're able to create these dynamic population density maps, which we then combine with information on hazards, in this case flooding, and vulnerability to calculate dynamic hazard risk maps, again, for different days of the week and different times of day. When we look at what this means in terms of how hazard can change over times of day, on the left, we have the top 8 districts in terms of hazard risk, and we can see that on a weekday, the hazard risk in a district can as much as double as you move into the center of the day, as people move into areas for presumably work or education. We see a similar pattern, but slightly reduced on the Saturday. But on the Sunday, we see very little change in hazard risk over time as people don't travel in the same way on Sundays to, say, a centralized area for access to work opportunities or education. When we zoom in specifically on Accra, and particularly the central urban area of Accra, we can see this pattern again. So on a weekday, we can see that there's a substantial increase in the number of people and therefore the risk of flooding in the central business district, especially as we reach the peak of the day at 1 o'clock. And that's shown by the dark purple area in the center of Accra, which then reduces again as we move into evening and people leave the city center. We see a similar pattern on Saturdays, but focused in a slightly different area, perhaps related more to commercial and shopping opportunities rather than work and education. And then in comparison on Sunday, we see much smaller changes in risk over the course of the day as people don't travel into the center of the city in the same way on a Sunday. So a very quick exploration of some of the applications, and I look forward to answering any questions, or if people would like some further examples, very happy to discuss them when we move on to the Q&A. But before I wrap up, I'll just again point people towards our open online knowledge center for CGR analytics, FlowGeek, if they'd like to find any further information about these applications or how we analyze and process CGR data. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas. And maybe, you can also copy a couple of links in the chat so people can also navigate and check or maybe check later once we are done with the webinar. Thank you. I think it was excellent to take stock of very concrete examples of potential uses for MPD. And I'm sure that our colleagues in the audience will follow up with you to learn more on how they could apply those techniques on their data. I'm happy that you touched on use of the data for the health sectors, for calculating dynamic risks to specific hazards. You had an example on flooding. What I'm hearing so far is that there is a lot of potential on MPD to produce statistics on short-term mobility. It would be interesting also to talk as we move also to the next sessions, to the next presentations, to see the potential of MPD to estimate long-term migration. So, for example, can we get 12 months of data, or that's impossible from a mobile network operator or from the capacity of the regulator? So this is a question that I leave for all of you for later. Short-term mobility versus long-term migration. But let's move to our next colleague, Lamine Diba. So we move we had Ghana, our colleagues from the National Statistical Office in Ghana. Now we are moving to the Gambian Bureau of Statistics. Very happy to have you with us. Lamine, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Francesca. Let me try to see if I can share my screen. Otherwise, Jonas is going to share it for me. I think Jonas can share that directly, but then let me just see. I think he's allowing me.
Yeah, just right. I'll share as well. Okay. Can you see the screen? Is the screen visible?
Sorry for that hiccup. This is network.
Okay. So can you see the screen now?
No, it's not coming. It's not coming yet.
No. Okay. Let me reshare it again. Okay.
Jonas, do you need any help?
Yeah, I'm trying to share the screen, but yeah. Share now. Yeah. So why it's not sharing?
Yeah, Jonas, you're sharing the extended screen. Can you just duplicate screen?
Lamine, do you want to start introducing your presentation while our colleagues in ECA sort out the screen sharing?
Yes,
Maybe you can just tell us the story. Thank you.
Yeah, very well. I think I can do that. Basically, thank you for this. Our presentation is basically the use of the mobile phone data to enhance migration statistics in the Gambia. And this was a partnership between the Gambia Bureau of Statistics and the regulatory authority with financial support from the World Bank and technical support from the University of Tokyo. Our motivation was enhanced by both Flowminder and Positium in 2019 when we met in Kigali. And we expressed our interest in the use of mobile phone data to complement our official statistics. And since then, we have been working as a team. It will be interesting to know that one of our team members, that is the University of Tokyo, is represented in the presentation here, and for technical backstopping, she will be assisting us. In terms of overview, we want to give a context, our initial engagement and how we were able to access the data. We also want to talk about some results. There are a lot of results that have been produced, but we just want to give a summary of some results from the internal migration use case. And then we also have an idea of using, because currently Gambia is about to conduct the population and housing census, and we have included some questions in the census questionnaire to be able to adjust for biases. So basically, this is important for us because we know, like the colleague from the Ghana Statistics Office has stated, there are issues about around data, and we need to be transparent about them. But then, how do we also make adjustments to be able to address these issues, and more importantly, the biases in the CDR data that we are going to encounter? Yeah. So to move forward, I don't. Yona are you able to share?
Yes. Yeah. I will
Is
share.
Yona able to share the screen now?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's move to the third. Okay. No. Next. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. No. Yeah. Exactly. So I think you should be in the presentation mode, right? So it's important to know that in the Gambia we have a lot of disparity when it comes to economic activities, and this is a reason why people will have to move from one location to another location. And this has given rise to high level of migration, which offers access to opportunities, but also has its downside, its consequences, because it also causes some external vulnerabilities. We also know that there is high level of dependence on remittances from migrants, both domestic and international. And that is why it's very important to look at migration from different perspectives.
You
Next
wanna
slide.
send all the presentations to ECA.
Next slide, please. Yeah, so like I said, our early engagement before the COVID was that we at GBOS we got support from the World Bank, and we started discussing with relevant authorities to be able to see what policies we can get from the use of the mobile phone data. And then we also explored different measures to be able to make sure we are able to respect the privacy policies that are available. So this was before the COVID. Next slide. And then during the discussion, we were able to get access to the data. And then in between, there was COVID. So the focus of the use for the mobile phone data shifted a bit to helping. Of course, I want to re-echo what Thomas was saying regarding the use of MPD for public health issues, because at the time we had the outbreak of the COVID, there was barely no data to be able to help the authorities to know what to do. So the MPD analysis quickly offered government the opportunity to be able to enforce measures and then place surveillance sites in different locations based on the output of the initial analysis from the MPD. So it also enabled us to have timely and quality data to be able to conduct some phone surveys. And then so at the stakeholder level, like I said, because we know that access is very, very key when it comes to the use of MPD. And at the level of the NSO, we don't have direct access to this data, and we don't have control over the private sector. So we had to employ a multi-stakeholder approach by bringing in the regulator, and then the regulator use its mandate to be able to access, at least engage the MNOs. And at the use of at the analysis level, we had the GBOS, the World Bank, and then the University of Tokyo to be able to use the data to analyze and then come up with insights. And then we also had to be very careful about the data protection policies and regulations and frameworks that are in place so that we don't breach any such regulations. Next slide. So the framework of the data access was such that the MNOs were supported technically by the University of Tokyo to be able to de-identify their data at the unit level. And then this data was then supplied to the regulator where the infrastructure was located. And then the data was now remotely accessed by the analyst, and analysis was done remotely, results were produced, and these results are now being used by policymakers to be able to draw evidence-based policies from the results. This is the framework that around which we worked to be able to get the data and analyze and also produce results. Next slide. So, like I said earlier on, based on the privacy protection, we made sure the data is aggregated and it's also strictly confidential. We also made sure it is purely used for statistical purposes and nothing else. And there is no identifying the data that we're able to use to identify any individual. And we made sure also we paid attention to the legal frameworks that exist that protect people and make sure their privacies are preserved. And of course, I said earlier on, the data was accessed remotely from the Pura premises. Next slide. So basically, the paper that has been produced from this analysis is titled Internal Migration Use Case, and the QR code that is here can be used to access this article or this paper. Next slide. Yeah. So based on the 2019 migration study, it was revealed that 1/3 of households in the Gambia have at least one international migrant. And then 55% of migrants were found to be people who send remittances to the Gambia. Now, based on the data set that we have, the CDR data set we have, on average, every individual has about 10 records in the data set. So this is a very rich data set that we believe could be used to be able to produce insight for policy. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah, of course, we have challenges, and we all know that migration evolves over time, but it still remains unclear how this does. How does it evolve? And then we also know one of the reasons for people to migrate is better economic opportunities. These are pull factors, economic and social opportunities that people want to get access to. However, one problem we have when it comes to conventional data sources is the timeliness of it and the special aggregation that we need to be able to adequately respond to some of these questions that will be asked about how and what influences migration. Next slide. Okay, so to answer a question that Francesca asked just before I came in, was access to long-term data. Of course, we were able to get 16-month data, CDR data. Of course, you're asking about 12 months. So we got about 16-month data between March 2020 and June 2021. And this is from one of the leading MNOs. At the time, we believe it has the largest market share. And they were cooperative to give us data as much as 16 months CDR data. And this has about 3.3 million unique IDs, but 34% of these data have only 1 month data. But then looking at the distribution, we saw that nearly the entire country was covered by cell towers. So almost all at the district level or at the regional level, the entire country is covered by cell towers. So this is a good representation of the dynamics of the population in the Gambia. Next slide. So the methodology that is used, because we want to examine the migration landscape in a more frequent and geographically granular manner. It was then agreed to use the Blumenstock methods, where the focus is on the center of gravity. And then, in summary, once the center of gravity is calculated, this data is now converted to the person's residential location at the LGA level, at the district level, at the ward level, and at the cell tower level. Next slide. So we looked at migration from two perspectives. Migration occurs at a particular number of months. At one location, we expect that the person must spend a minimum amount of time there. And once the person moves, there's also another period that the person was expected to be there. And these attributes were given the values of M and beta. So basically, the parameters M and beta were set at 2. Minimum, the person should be 2 months at the location of origin, and after movement, the person should be at least 2 months in that same position. That way, we see that there is migration, and this basically was okay. Thank you. This basically was what was used for this analysis, and it was realized that only 3% of the data, about 41,000 IDs, had migration events based on the parameters that have been set, and 96% of the data had 96% of the IDs had data only for 1 month, and this was not what was used in the data set. So only 3% of the data was used for the analysis. Next. And then what were the key findings? Here we realized that the local government areas, the LGAs, to which most of the migrations are happening, are the Kanifing and Brikama LGAs. But we also know that there are movements within LGAs. This also includes LGAs which are predominantly rural. And naturally, what happens within those LGAs is that people are moving from poorer districts to richer districts. And it's interesting to know that Gambia has 8 local government areas. And we will see in the next slides how these movements are happening. Next slide. Okay, so on this chart, you will see on the left-hand side we have the origin, and then the right-hand side we have the destination. And 70% of the movements are going to 3 LGAs, that's Banjul, Kanifing, and Brikama, or more than 70%. And interestingly, you will see that the most people moving from Kanifing are mostly going to Brikama LGA, but also people moving from Brikama LGA are mostly going to Kanifing LGA. And then we know North Bank region, which is Karawan, is also predominantly rural, but then we have people moving from LGAs like Kanifing and Brikama, which have more urban centers, moving to Kanifing as well. And then Kuntaur, which is almost entirely rural, has almost all its residents moving, instead of to the more urban centers, to Janjambure LGA, which is also predominantly rural. So this is an interesting insight that would need policy attention. But then in the next slide, we'll see some other interesting outcomes. Next slide, please. So in here, we looked at the intra-LGA movement, and we only focus on one LGA, which is Basse. So in Basse, we looked at how people are moving, and interestingly, you have on the left-hand side, you will see the last three districts are predominantly the poorer districts, and on the right-hand side, the first 4 are the richer districts. Of course, even if you look at the poverty analysis at the district level, in Basse, you will see these are the predominantly richer districts compared to the ones below. And Basse, people moving from Basse are mostly moving to the Jimara districts, while people also moving from Jimara are mostly moving to the Basse districts. And these two districts are the richer districts in Basse compared to the rest of the districts that we have in Basse region. And this same analysis we have here is similar to what happens in other LGAs, especially when it comes to the Western region, the Brikama LGA, because we have a lot of people moving from the Fonis coming to the richer districts of the Combos. Next slide, please. So basically, we, like I said earlier on, we know there are biases in the CDR database when it comes to the representativeness, taking into account children, elderly people, and the poor women, and so on and so forth. So we expect the analysis to be skewed. As a result, we believe using the census data that is disaggregated at the level of sex, age, income, and everything else would be able to help us to adjust for these biases. So we included some questions in the census questionnaire to be able to know how people are using their mobile phone. And also, we also want to know those who are non-subscribers and how they are behaving. So this is interesting because once you get this, you will be able to account for only mobile phone users and adjust for the biases that you have in your CDR data. Next slide. So by aligning the CDR data with the census demographics, with the breakdown of mobile phone users and non-users, we'll be able to adjust for the biases. And then we also want to enhance the accuracy to enable policymakers to be able to access more accurate data for better decision making, and then to also improve the validity of the findings of the recommendations derived from CDR data. Next slide. I think this should be the final one. Now, what are the key takeaways? CDR data provide useful insights for understanding internal migration, services and opportunities in urban areas are the main reasons why people are moving from one area to other area. And then economic development and decentralized services may play an important role in increasing economic opportunities and services in rural areas. And then we also know that using the census data is expected to improve the representativeness of statistics produced from CDR data. Next slide. I think that's next.
Yeah.
I think that should be the end of this. Yeah, I think that should be the end of the presentation.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
so much.
Back to you.
Thank you, Lamine. I mean, so rich presentation. I will definitely go back and take my time to study it carefully. I love that you answer my question. So you really show us how you put together, you estimated migration, the formulas, and the assumptions that you made. I also like that you show us, you have one slide with the framework and where the data are sitting, and the data actually remains with the regulator. I think that's an important point that should be stressed. And also towards the end that you pointed out the importance of validating and double checking and triangulating with an independent data source, right? So, and of course, the census, when available, maybe once every 10 years, but that should be our key source of information for population data. Having said that, we don't have too much time, unfortunately. We only have 25 minutes, still 2 presenters. Can I ask our colleagues, we have Zachary and we have Sim, to please be as to the point as possible and try to get below 10 minutes if you can. I know that it's asking a lot. Thank you, Zachary. You have the floor.
Thank you. Yes, I'll do my best to be as efficient as possible. Let me share my screen. All right, are you able to see my screen? Okay. Alrighty. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Zachary Stringfight. I'm a data analyst with Flowminder Foundation. I'm going to be going into how we would propose correcting for biases in mobility indicators derived from call detail records and how to scale these to the general population. So just a brief outline. First, spend a bit of time going into why we need to bias adjust CDR mobility indicators, how we propose doing so, and reference back to what some of the previous speakers have talked about. These use cases are in DRC and Ghana in particular. So using mobile network operated data or CDRs, they have some comparative advantages to survey and census data. One, they're quite automated in their collection, and they offer high temporal granularity and high spatial granularity. And when they're created, they're available within a pretty short amount of time, usually accessible within a few days. But there are disadvantages to this data, or shortcomings maybe. Setting up partnerships with all the necessary stakeholders can be a rather lengthy one. The setup costs for the infrastructure necessary to process these data can be high. And in low and middle income countries, there can be a lack of rigorous validation data for mobility at a really high spatial resolution. And what I'll be focusing on today is the selectivity and biases inherent to MNO data or CDR data. So first, their mobility is often different between mobile phone users and non-users, as was just discussed. Here's an example from Ghana. We asked in their annual household income and expenditure survey if a respondent had taken a trip of 5 kilometers or more in the past 3 months. And so we see that non-phone users, about 30% of them had taken such a trip, whereas phone users, 60% had. So we see quite a large difference in their mobility between phone users and non-users. Ghana has a pretty high share of phone users in the country, so it's the grand mean for the total population is about 54%. So what this can lead to is overestimating mobility if you're just using CDR data, and at times even underestimate it. Not all mobility indicators show such large mobility differentials, but this one is a good example of that. So CDR data is often referred to as big data. Sometimes it's not so big data. If we look at these collection of figures as an example of the national adult population in a country, the different colors and outlines represent different groups. So in this hypothetical situation, we have a country with a pretty high phone use population. Only the figures in a blue outline are non-phone users, whereas the rest are considered phone users. The solid blue figures are subscribers to an MNO that we don't have access to their CDR data, whereas the gold figures are from an MNO that we do have a partnership with and have access to their CDRs. However, those just outlined in gold are not active enough for us to derive a home location and establish when a relocation occurs. So we're really just working with this bottom row. And this can be problematic, but with additional data on demographics and phone use and mobility from field in phone surveys or censuses, you can use these additional sources to address these biases, thus getting the most out of CDR data. So all of that is to say that MNO subscribers are not a random sample of the population, nor can be assumed to be. So there's a need for some data triangulation, as CDR aggregates alone are not sufficient to make estimates of population counts or density. They also can't tell us about population change, as they don't provide any info on births and deaths or international migration. And extrapolation outside of coverage areas of CDR is not possible. So therefore, census and survey data should be used. So FlowMinder has recently developed estimation methods to adjust for these representation biases and provide population scaled estimates for relocations from subregion to subregion per month, as well as estimated residents per subregion per month. We call these bias adjusted and population scaled estimates, or weighted estimates. And they rely on the CDR aggregates, of course, primary and secondary survey data, and existing population estimates. So I'm going to walk you through our method for monthly residence estimates. We begin with a baseline population in month 0 in this case, and we use an existing estimate for the population in that subregion, and the date is tied to when the data collection for that existing estimate occurred. So if it was the census and the census was taken in June 2021, this will be our month 0. Now, in order to calculate the next month's population, we take our CDR aggregates in bilateral flows between our region of interest and all the other regions that we see subscribers relocating to and from. We use our survey-based adjustment and scaling factors on these to estimate the net flow of subscribers or residents from month 0 to 1. Add those together, and then factor in the population change estimate to that new population, and this will give us an estimated population of that subregion for month 1. And you can iterate this same process month by month for as long as you have CDR data. The method for the relocations estimates in particular, we'll spend a little bit of time on that. So relocations from area A to B between month 0 and 1, or M and N, can be estimated from CDR aggregates of relocations between those areas and months, and by applying a flow adjustment factor and a flow scaling factor. So the flow factor right now is adjusted for the number of SIMs per user, as CDR data aren't individual people necessarily, but rather SIM cards or subscriptions. So we need to adjust for the fact that maybe multiple people use the same SIM card, and that people might be using multiple SIM cards. And so this is our adjustment factor. And the flow scaling factor is the inverse of the share of the MNO users within the flow. And just to note that these parameters for the subset of mobile households and individuals are only available at an admin 1 by admin 1 level. Talking about some of the projects or countries that were mentioned earlier today, for the DRC, we based our baseline population on World Pop estimates from 2020, as well as a microcensus data collection effort we led in 2021 that covered 7 provinces, as well as had questions about phone users and non-phone users, their mobility and their phone use. And we also commissioned a phone survey there in 2021. For Ghana, with our partnership with GSS, we have access to the AHI survey, which covers phone users and non-users, the census from 2021, And we also commissioned a phone survey in Ghana that was carried out by GSS. So all of this has led us to be able to produce monthly mobility and population estimates. You've already heard the use cases for a couple of these countries in DRC and Ghana. We're also doing a lot of work on this in Haiti, giving particular attention to internal displacement there. So that's another major component of our work right now. And I'll wrap up there, just cover next steps. So for this method, we're working to ensure regular updates to the parameters because these will change over time, the share of the population that uses phones, the mobility of different groups, etc. And we're also working to onboard additional MNOs to address that subsetting issue that we saw earlier. And then we're continuously refining our method for adjustment and scaling, and we're looking to test these estimations with validation data when that becomes available. And we'll be hopefully publishing a paper on this in the near future about this method. And that will be it for me. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to any feedback or questions you may have.
Thank you, Zachary. And you were also excellent in keeping up with the timing. Very much appreciated. And I think you are the only one who really zoomed in into the assumptions, adjustments that need to be made that are behind the estimation methods proposed to come up with population statistics and population mobility statistics when we use MPDs. So thank you for doing that. Straight to our last presenter. Everybody knows Sim. You have the floor. If you can also try to be as concise as possible, so we may still have a few minutes to go through the questions that were left behind. Please, Sim.
Of course. And checking if you can see my screen. I can go on. Right. So we've heard many presenters. I think it's clear to everyone that there's a lot of work done on mobile phone data for population, and it should be also clear that people who are working on this, they really care about the results, and they care about sharing these results with everybody. So you're not alone. So I want to just end with a positive note that the UN Committee of Experts on Big Data and Data Science for Official Statistics has released the guide on mobile phone data for dynamic population mapping. And the authors are mentioned on this slide, but they in turn relied on other people doing the work in the countries, of course. So we've heard that dynamic population mapping can answer how to, not be dependent on logistics of surveys and census and be more dynamic in how we map the population. And we heard how this population we have is really behaving in a dynamic way. And how can we understand this, not at census night or at any given time when it might not produce the right result, but also understand at different places where people are at different times of the day and on different days, even when they're away from the place of residence or where they were when they did the census. So we take this very dynamic view of the population. We model this based on mobile phone data. So this is how it looks when you look at aggregated movements of mobile data in one city, people going to work, but then we translate that into statistics and input for these systems for population data or operational databases of population statistics. And of course, how we do that is a methodological question, but it should be clear by now that there are many different uses for this data. All of these have been mentioned during the presentations, and really appreciate UNFPA for sharing especially the opportunities that exist in preparation of the census and complementing the census, even when it's done. So I will not focus on these, rather just to point out that apart from everything you've seen, there's a future that is being delivered right now to create a wholly data-driven census combining administrative and big data. So if we think about both administrative and big data having signs of life of each individual person, then even when we have countries where population registers do not exist or are not complete, these methods have shown to create positive results that could lead in the future to wholly data-driven census. So not only the Nordic countries, I'm here in Estonia, but even in Estonia, we did one study to improve the quality of the registers with mobile phone data. So of course, you have questions about data access. I think these were properly addressed in different guides, but also in the last webinar. You also have methodological questions. Does this actually work? And I hope you got the answers. For you listeners, you got the answers to these questions in the webinar. But for readers, the hints are provided in the guide on how to build the data models, how to detect, choose the right methods for place of residence detection and data fusion, and how to also validate the results so that we know that we can trust the result. And from the guide, I'd like to point out some important points. One is that the choice of criteria in place of residence detection algorithm, it actually does matter. So there's a link to a study done in France studying it's like a meta review of different methods, and actually tested on mobile phone data. There's a big difference in what kind of method you choose to understand place of residence. And how to validate could also have different methods. You could look at aggregate comparison between census and MPD result, and the results are promising in those countries where they are available. And you can also think about, if you don't have access to full-fledged mobile phone data, you could also try to do a validation panel, kind of a survey-based approach where you ask the persons for their home address. You get the same address from the registry and from mobile telephone operators. So these methods for validation also exist and have been tested to work quite well. So what can you do as practical next steps? First thing, I believe that you have a lot of information to process from this webinar, but do join the mobile phone data task team. Link will be in this slides. And then also read the guide on use of MPD for dynamic population mapping. But then there are other steps that might be quite familiar for you if you think about how you use new data or how you adopt new data sources for statistics, and it's not any different for privately held data. However, some stakeholder management is probably key, communication and understanding the different needs and legislation of that stakeholders like telecom regulators and mobile operators have to contend with. You have to take this into account. However, we have seen that for those countries who have positioned mobile phone data in their strategy and have taken the necessary first steps, they have also seen results in just a few years. So thank you from my side.
Thank you, Sim. This is really a great way to end the session. I think you gave us the summary of everything that has been covered over the past 2 hours. So not much to add from my side. We still have literally 4 minutes. So I want to get the opportunity to other people to take the floor. If there is any burning question for our panelists, or this is also an opportunity for the 6 speakers to get one last keyword or one thought that you would like to share with the audience. You only have 1 minute and one thing that you want to highlight, and hopefully you are not highlighting all the same points. Why don't we start with Louise, who was the first 2 hours ago. If you're still with us, the one point you want to really leave the audience with, why it is critical to start experimenting with MPD. Louise.
Because it can, as we have been, all the presenters have mentioned, MPD is a great resource to complement and to improve the data we collect through census and surveys activities. Thank you.
Perfect. And that's Louise from UNFPA. And what about David from the Ghana Statistical Service? What do you want the audience to remember out of this 2 hours discussion? David is not with us. What about Thomas Flomande?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I think closing thoughts are, there are challenges and obstacles to using mobile phone data, but the opportunities and the broad range of applications that are available once you cross those initial barriers can make it a really valuable data source for a broad range of applications. And I think it's important to bring in lots of different stakeholders from across different areas to really source those ideas and those applications.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. And we have Lamine from the Gambian Bureau of Statistics.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Basically, I just want to reiterate that the approach to mobile phone data has to be multi-stakeholder approach, because we have a lot of players, both the funders, but the regulators also. And I'm glad Esperanza has clearly stated that the ITU is always looking for these kind of opportunities to be able to support that access. However, at the local level, we must also build a multi-stakeholder approach to be able to get not only CDR data, but any other data that is being held at the level of the private sector. Yeah, that is what I want to share with the audience.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lamine. And we have Zachary.
Yes, I think Tom covered a lot of it, what I was thinking, but I think I would just like to point out that these the use cases of this CDR and mobile phone data are really exciting, as we've seen a lot of potential here, but that the conventional and more traditional data sources we rely on, like censuses and surveys, are still really essential to make the most out of CDRs and mobile phone data.
Thank you. Thank you, Zachary. And then, of course, the challenge of how to make sense of all these different data sets, the traditional ones, the more innovative ones, at least for official statisticians like MPD, how do we integrate them? That's going to be also something we need to properly review and address. And Sim, you have the last word.
Yes, I second everything said before, and I hope one takeaway is that there is international and also different countries can support your journey to MPD, and experts as well. And some of some of the people here speaking, we live this life. Mobile phone data for different statistics is what we do every day. So reach out to us.
Yes, and with that note, I think we are ready to wrap up. From my side, I would recommend to all national statistical offices and other experts that are in the room with us to really look at what Esperanza shared in the chat. There is a link, and that will be your point of entry to get in contact with all the experts that are working on the use of MPD for population statistics and much more, and to benefit from their experience and lessons learned. So with that, I would also like to thank our colleagues at the Economic Commission for Africa and to the colleagues working on the big data for Africa in particular, to the UN Regional Hub on Big Data and Big Science for hosting this important event. I look forward to new opportunities to further unpack the potential of mobile phone data for population statistics. Thank you. Thank you so much to all. And big thank to our speakers.
Very well done, Francesca. Thank you for moderating.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for everything. Take care. Have a nice day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Francesca. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.